Have the Mariners actually been waiting for Roki Sasaki or someone else? We'll answer that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We weren't able to get into our mailbag on Monday, so we're going to do that today. But before we get into your Mariners questions, quick shout out to our title sponsor today, Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. Some quick news and notes on the Mariners. It is January 15th after all, which means the start of the new international signing period. The Mariners have officially inked their two biggest international prospects, Yoan Bautista and Kendry Martinez. Both of those guys ranking in the top 20 of Pipeline's top international prospects this signing period. I believe Bautista comes in at number 6, Martinez at number 19. So that is officially done. The Mariners have also made a couple of small trades. They've sent cash for both of these players over the last couple of days. Utility man Miles Mastrobuoni, get your head out of the gutters, folks, from the Chicago Cubs, and catcher Blake Hunt, who was with the Mariners last year, got traded to the Orioles for Mike Baumann, was originally acquired from the Tampa Bay Rays last offseason. And Colby, he was pretty good in his 24 games with the Rainiers last year. 293, 372, 533. That's a 123 WRC plus at the plate. And then he goes to Baltimore and in their AAA affiliate slashes 179, 219, 278 for a WRC plus, Colby, of 24. Yikes.
So what you're saying is the Mariners are better at developing hitters than the Baltimore Orioles.
Clearly.
I mean, that's right there. The proof is in the pudding.
That's right.
Yeah, so the Mariners kind of continuing this trend of shuffling the back end of their 40-man. Although I do think that Hunt has a decent chance of actually helping the Mariners in 2025 in a more than, fill in type of role. Like you mentioned, he was very good for Seattle last year. He's, been a pretty good, consistent minor league performer on top of that. And the Mariners right now, they technically have one catcher, or they did have one catcher on their 40-man. Garver is going to be the backup catcher unless he gets hurt during the spring. Garver is going to be the backup, but right now they have one actual catcher on the 26-man roster. And so obviously you need some depth in the minors, and, no disrespect to Nick Raposo, who's no longer in the org, no disrespect to the sheriff, Jacob Nottingham. But you want somebody who, has some upside, you might be able to find something, valuable out of this player. And you don't want to rush Harry Ford to the big leagues, and B, you don't want to then sit Harry Ford on the bench 6 days a week. Like that doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
So Hunt has a chance to, play a role here in Seattle specifically, and I say it's a pretty good chance because there's like 3 really obvious avenues that Hunt would be on the 26-man and actually have to play and help you. And, if you guys have forgotten, our comp for Blake Hunt has been Tom Murphy, who just, smashes lefties, pretty average, fringe average defender. And he just mostly uses them against lefties, and he's really good against them. And, he plays twice a week instead of Cal playing 6 to 7 times a week. He plays 4 to 5 times a week. So I think there's a possibility that Hunt can help you there, particularly because if Garver gets hurt, Hunt is the next guy up. You're going to Hunt over Ford and all the other guys. If Garver is really bad, like it was last year, the Mariners might just DFA him in the middle of the year, and you need a catcher. Blake Hunt would be the guy, and he at least has a shot to be an average major league backup catcher for you. But on the flip side, what if Mitch Garver is really good, like he was in 2023? And all of a sudden, you probably don't want to risk that guy catching that often, like we talked about last year when we thought maybe Garver was going to be good.
Yeah.
And so he becomes a full-time DH. We need a catcher. Blake Hunt
Right.
becomes the backup catcher. He allows you to move Garver back into his full-time DH role if Garver earns that. So there's quite a few avenues to get Hunt on the 26 man at some point this year and have him playing a critical role as a backup catcher. We'll see. He might not even survive the winter on the 40 man. There's still a lot of shuffling left to do. But of all the guys that the Mariners have added to the 40 man, the Danner, the Jay, Mastroboni, and Hunt, like Hunt is the one that pretty clearly has the easiest path to be like an actual impactful Mariner in 2025, but we'll see.
Sure. Now, Hunt wasn't the only catcher that was recently DFA'd and moved today. Blake Sable was the other one from the Giants. He got traded to the Red Sox for cash today. Would you have preferred Sable over Hunt?
Yeah. Yeah. Sable is a guy who's actually produced some at the big league level, and Hunt hasn't. So has Hunt even appeared in the big leagues yet? I don't think so.
No.
So yeah, Sable's actually done a little bit at the big league level. He's a lefty. He actually has played a little bit of outfield even. So yeah, I would have preferred Sable, but Hunt, probably a little bit of a better fit because Cal isn't going to sit against righties unless, he absolutely has to. So Hunt would be a better hitter against lefties. And
the organization is already familiar with him.
They know him and all that. And they probably have a pretty good idea of how to get him back on track and all that. So yeah, I think he caught a lot of these pitchers last year in spring training, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I get it, but I would have preferred Sable. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into these questions. We're going to start with Nate, who wants to know, maybe Jerry is waiting more on Bregman than he is Roki Sasaki. Alex Bregman to the Cubs might put Nico Hoerner back in play. Red Sox might be more motivated in a Tristan Casas deal if Bregman goes to Boston. Or maybe Detroit. Does anyone become available if Alex goes there? Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, really. Like, to what end are the Mariners waiting on Roki Sasaki for? Right? Unless they're getting him, which now we know for sure, absolutely 100%, they are not. So what would they be waiting on him for? Right? Does him going to the Dodgers or the Padres or the Blue Jays or even some of the teams that got eliminated like the Cubs, etc., is that actually going to have a major impact on like Luis Castillo's market in the way that, fans have theorized, at least I've seen on social media?
Seems unlikely.
Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, or I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. But with Alex Bregman, I think there are multiple ways, as Nate pointed out here, that this could directly impact the Mariners wherever he goes. Because, all right, he goes to New York, right? Maybe they move Mark Vientos to first, or, they still sign Pete Alonso after that, and then they are willing to trade Mark Vientos, or he goes to the Cubs. Now that makes them more willing to potentially trade Nico Hoerner. He goes to Boston. They're going to move Rafael Devers to first, at least you think so. And then, Tristan Casas is probably more available. Detroit, you would think that would make Matt Vierling available, or Jace Young, right? So there are a lot of different avenues that Bregman could go down that could impact the Mariners directly, I would think, at least. So, yeah, if you were asking me, if the Mariners are waiting on one player, or they have been waiting on one player's market to fully develop, I would say that Alex Bregman is more likely that guy than Roki Sasaki ever was.
Yeah, I'd also throw Nolan Arenado into the mix there as well. It's been, heavily rumored that the Cardinals are kind of desperate to trade this guy, and they already did once, but obviously he rejected the trade with his no trade clause. Cardinals Live, who's been fairly reliable this offseason, and their reporting suggested that there's going to be an Arenado move as soon as today. So that would seemingly eliminate one of the teams in on Bregman, you would think, unless Arenado's just going completely somewhere we're not expecting. But yeah, so we'll see what happens at third base. But yeah, the third base market is what's holding things up right now, because the Mariners still need a third baseman, and there's so few to go around that, the Mariners are waiting and they're going to see where Bregman goes, and they might pop a player or two loose simply because, ironically, the teams that, have a third baseman, a pretty good one, are still the teams that are looking at Bregman. The Cubs have Shaw. They still want Bregman. Veerling is fine. The Tigers want Bregman. Obviously Vientos is good and probably a first baseman, but whatever. You could fake it at third for a while. They want Bregman. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I do think Bregman is the guy who's more so holding up the things on the Mariners end than anywhere else or anybody else. And I do wonder, like, maybe it's not even specifically for the Tigers. Maybe Bregman not only, makes Veerling available, but if the Tigers land Veerling, or if they land Bregman, are they content, or are they going to push to really, push their rebuild even further? And are they going to be more interested in Luis Castillo? Can they afford that monetarily? I think they can. So yeah, maybe they get Bregman, and then all of a sudden Veerling becomes a part of a Luis Castillo trade that we're not talking about. So like it might even directly influence the Mariners in some regard. But yeah, I do think that the third base market is what's holding it up right now. And I feel like either Arenado or Bregman need to be moved or need to pick their new team. And at that point, I think it has the potential at least to open up new avenues for the Mariners to get something done.
I mean, is there a place that you would be rooting for Bregman to go to? Probably Chicago, right? Because they love Nico Horner so much.
Yeah, I think that's probably. Now the problem there is that Horner is second base only, particularly since he's coming off of his shoulder injury. So, like Donovan Solano, full-time third baseman,
or he's playing first,
right? But then, you still need a third baseman at that point, or maybe just roll with Dylan because second base is more settled. So yeah, probably Chicago, just because there seems to be the most smoke there. I mean, like Boston, maybe, but again, I don't know how you get Casas without giving up one of your arms, and the Mariners are not going to do that. Very clearly, they're not going to do that. Detroit is interesting, though. Veerling is an interesting get. They also have guys like Kerry Carpenter and Parker Meadows, who we know the Mariners have liked in the past. So maybe there's a bigger deal there, but I would say, yeah, Chicago is probably the best case scenario for Seattle. But it sounds like Chicago is just now kind of entering the mix, whereas Detroit and Boston have really laid down the groundwork. So they've got some catching up to do.
All right, so we're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you once again by Gametime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game, or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Gametime. And that was the case well before Gametime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Gametime Picks. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Gametime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're opening up the mailbag here on a rare mailbag Wednesday. Byron wants to know who is a better fit between Yoan Moncada and Jose Iglesias. It seems inevitable we sign one and then make our bigger move at the deadline. To me, it's Iglesias.
Yeah, I agree.
Better defender, coming off of a better year. I mean, he's not 3 years removed from his last good season. Brings a veteran presence. He can play shortstop. He can play second. He can play third. I'd rather take that shot than, hey, maybe Yoan Moncada can stay healthy and maybe he can hit like he did in 2021.
Yeah. Plus, you could also just do both. Like, you don't have to pick and choose. They both could fit on the roster.
It's
You get
true
a
too.
second baseman and a third baseman.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would prefer Iglesias. Now, Iglesias didn't play in 2023, and he only played 85 games in 2024. But hey, Yoan Moncada basically didn't play all of last year either.
No.
And like you said, he hasn't been fully healthy and good since 2021. So, yeah, I mean, all things being equal, and I think the money's going to be roughly the same, would be my guess. I'd rather have Iglesias.
All right. Aaron wants to know, recently MLB.com polled MLB execs on which org they think has the best farm system. The M's only received 2% of the vote. It appears other teams might not be very high on our system. Could this be a reason we haven't seen many of our prospects moved in trades?
I think this is a completely wrong interpretation of the poll that was put out there, because the poll specifically asked who has the best farm system in baseball. And yeah, the Mariners don't. So the fact that they got 2% is actually speaks pretty highly, because it's 2% more than I think, 20, like, one other organizations got. So that's still a top 10 system. And 2% think that, the Mariners system is the best. That speaks very highly of their top, um, of their top guys, because we know the system is a little thin after 15 to 20. Somewhere it gets pretty thin pretty fast. So yeah, no, I don't think that this is Major League Baseball doesn't like the Mariners prospects. I think they actually do, considering that they were one of the 10 best farm systems in baseball still. Again, despite really not having much after 15. And no, I don't think this is impacting the trades. I think that the reason, the Mariners have been able to trade their prospects right now is because nobody's looking for prospects. Like, there's been very few prospects.
That's the meta of the market.
Right. And so, yeah, I don't think there's anything negative about this poll. I don't think the Mariners have the best farm system in baseball. I think they're probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's a bad farm system. That doesn't mean there's not reason to be excited. That doesn't mean there's not valuable pieces in there. It means the opposite. By the way, this farm system's added Bautista now. They're going to add more. They have the number 3 pick coming up in July. For now, they have the 35th, 36th pick. So yeah, the farm system is going to be very good, and they've been proven that they can build that thing pretty quick over and over again. Anyways, but no, it's not like the whole only 2% said we had the best farm system. Not 2% said we have good prospects, right? No, you have good prospects. But like you said, it's just the market right now isn't valuing prospects the way you need them to. And that poll tells you that the Mariners still, Major League Baseball executives look around and be like, the Mariners farm system is really good. That's what that tells you.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is a rare mailbag Wednesday. We got this question from the Heat Miser, who wants to know, how do the Mariners bridge the gap between their two seeming windows of contention? First one being the current one with dominant controlled pitching staff, Cal and Julio, and the next one with the young crop featuring Colt Emerson, Cole Young, Las Montes, etc. This is something that Jeff Passan has talked about as well. I assume maybe that's why you're asking this. I mean, simply put, you got to spend money to keep that core intact, to carry it over to the next era. Because even if, let's say, some of these guys come up by 2026, okay, well, you're entering the final year of club control for Logan Gilbert and Cal Raleigh. You're in the second to last year of George Kirby's club control.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Crawford's off the roster by then,
and there's no guarantee at that point. Like, Colt Emerson is going to be good. Las Montes is going to be good. I mean, there's no guarantee that ever happens. But specifically, when it comes to what is likely going to be their first year in Major League Baseball, there's absolutely no guarantee that they're part of the window, right, in 2026. So it might not be until 27, 28, even 29 that you actually find yourself in that window that you're talking about. So how do you bridge the gap? Yeah, you spend the money. You extend this current era into the next one.
Yes, and you also give them incentive to want to sign here by spending money on the roster to bring in, essentially hired guns to come in and bridge that gap for you. So, this idea that we shouldn't sign a second baseman because, Cole Young should be ready this year is, BS. to put it nicely, because we don't know if Cole Young is going to be up this year. And even if he is, we don't know if he's going to be any good for a couple years or ever. We're guessing, right? So oh no, we have too many good second basemen is not a problem. It's never been a problem. We have too many good players has never been a problem in the history of baseball. If that happens, you trade some of those good players for other players who can extend the window. Like, this isn't rocket science. Like, there's no such thing as having too much talent. There's really no such thing as blocking a player, because if the player that's being blocked is good enough, they will be the starter. They will get the job, and they will trade the other person, or they will trade that player to get something. Like, it's absurd to think that, like, oh, we have to keep third base open for 2026 because Colt Emerson might be that guy. Like, that's absurd. That's loser talk. So how do you extend the window? Well, you extend this window by extending players, but also spending money on the outside, or on the outside of the core, essentially, to win as much as possible. Therefore, incentivizing the team that you have on the field right now to stick around. And so, yeah, it's really not rocket science. You spend money. Very simple. You spend money. Now, are the Mariners going to do that? History says no. So, yeah, there's a possibility that you end up with a couple of step back years right in the middle of Julio's prime. The Mariners will probably try to extend that window by trading a Logan Gilbert or a George Kirby with a couple of years of club control left. Try and do it like the Tampa Bay Rays model, essentially. But the best model, or the best way to do it, is to just extend your core, like the Atlanta Braves. So that's absolutely the best model. But I do think the Mariners are going to try, unfortunately, to adopt a Tampa Bay Rays model. And there's a reason that really only the Rays have been successful using that model with any regularity. I guess Cleveland you could throw in that mix, but Cleveland's had a couple of down years as well before this year really popping. So yeah, it does feel like, the easy answer is money. What do I think they're going to try to do? I think they're going to try and beat the Tampa Bay Rays, and that has traditionally been a recipe for disaster for any of the imitators trying to copy that.
All right, last question. This is all you, Colby. Jake wants to know, what current Mariners player does Colby think would do the best on Big Brother?
Yeah, Big Brother. I'm a big fan of Big Brother, if you guys didn't know, though not really the most recent seasons. If there's ever a Locked On Big Brother, you give me a call, though. I will do that show religiously. I will do it year round, because I'll just watch old seasons of Big Brother and talk about them on the podcast.
Sure.
So in Big Brother, you need a social game. You need to, get a lot of people to like you. It helps to be kind of a competitor, kind of a physical, win some competitions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for a guy who's well-liked, can win multitude of competitions like endurance comps and power comps and mental comps. So looking for a smart guy who's well-liked in the clubhouse, or because that would probably allow them to make friends in the Big Brother house. So I'm thinking JP Crawford.
Okay. I thought you were going Julio here.
No, I think Julio is such an imposing, like, physical beast that like people would look at him as a threat and try to get him out early. Whereas JP is kind of, string bean and like tall and laid back and just kind of chill. I feel like he kind of coast. And then when he really needed to win a competition, he could do it. So I feel like JP is probably the answer here. Like, you don't want to be too big of a threat is the problem. Although what Julio would have going for him is the showmances. He could probably get in a powerful alliance with a couple of the girls. Yeah. But I'll go JP. I think, vibes well with a lot of different people.
Sure.
Can kind of lay back, be the cool guy, just kind of not make an enemy of anybody. And then just when he really needs to win competitions, he can turn it on and be the good athlete and get stuff done. Also a pretty smart guy as well. So I think that guy probably does it. I would say the worst player.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I assumed. I think
Emerson
George
Hancock,
Kirby,
obviously.
Just add it to the list of things Emerson Hancock sucks at. But I'd actually say George Kirby would probably be the worst at Big Brother. He just feels like he would rub people the wrong way pretty early and like almost like arrogant with like his I feel like there's a thing called HOH-itis, which is basically like you win a competition and it goes to your head and you think like you're running the entire show.
Yeah.
I could see Kirby falling for that and people being like, dude, screw you. Like, we don't
HOH head of house. Okay.
Yeah, head of household. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I could see George being pretty bad. Julio is tough because either he would coast to the end or he'd be one of the first guys out. Depends on how big of a threat people viewed him as. But yeah, I think JP would do pretty well.
So on that note, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tyden Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tyden Gonzalez. Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also see that under our faces now. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.